So last week, I posted a video on the most underrated historical TV shows. And there's a link to it here if you want to go and watch that now. So I thought this week it only makes sense for me to make a video on the top 5 most overrated historical TV shows. And I feel it is safe to say that this will probably be my most controversial video yet. But first, I think it's important to look at what I consider to be the definition of overrated and what it is defined as for the purposes of this video. So in my opinion, being overrated by definition implies that a show is getting more recognition than it deserves. But it does not necessarily mean that this TV show sucks or isn't very good. It just means the show could be great, but it just gets more credit and recognition than I believe it deserves or is worthy of. So with that out of the way, I just wanted to get this out that I don't think any of these shows are bad. Some of them are my most favorite TV shows of all time. But here it is, my list of the top 5 most overrated historical TV shows. But first, before we start off the list, here is the winner of History Spark's 10k subscriber competition. So if this is you, please get in contact with us and we will arrange getting your prize out to you as soon as possible. So at number 5, it is The Borgias, a historical drama based on the Borgia family and the scandalous behaviors and actions of several members of their household, with bribery, intimidation, and murder being regular tools in their belt to increase their wealth and power. This is one of several shows based around the Borgia family, and it is in my opinion the weakest and most overrated depiction of this morally bankrupt family. If you're a fan of this channel, then you will already have heard me rave about how good Borgia, Faith and Fear is and how much I love that show. And I believe it to be the most entertaining and the most historically accurate depiction of the Borgia family. But unfortunately, the Borgias, the one that I'm putting at number 5 on this list, is definitely the much more popular version, most likely due to the involvement of Jeremy Irons with the project, who I will admit does do a great job of portraying Rodrigo Borgia, also known as Pope Alexander VI. But aside from that, I would say the acting in the show is subpar, the plot is historically inaccurate to a huge degree, even by Hollywood standards, and none of the characters are likable or able to create an emotional bond with the viewer, which makes me feel this show is overrated, as many people I know who are not even slightly interested in historical TV shows will say, oh, I've heard of the Borgias and it was great. And that's not to say I disagree, the Borgias is a good show, it's just not a great one, and it is definitely a show that I feel is overrated to a large degree. And the 4th spot on this list goes to The Spanish Princess, a sequel to the popular White Queen and White Princess miniseries. Although all the 3 series are great watches, The Spanish Princess is definitely the weakest of the trilogy and a show that I feel is 100% overrated. And even though the central character of the show, Catherine of Aragon, is a fascinating and interesting historical figure to explore, I just feel like it is never executed properly. Historical inaccuracies and political correctness aside, I feel this show struggles to get audiences engaged with the show, and if it wasn't for the great success of its predecessor series, this show would probably have never even got past its first season. But there's also a lot to like about this show. It's not fully terrible, and it is had some decent amount of success for a reason. The plot is fairly well put together, it's decent and it's well paced. Some of the characters are interesting, but a large amount of them are dull as a brick as well, and they are just put in to appease the woke crowd, who probably make up a very small minority of historical drama fans anyways. But if you're looking for the definition of an overrated show which suffers from woke culture and just poor production choices, then look no further than The Spanish Princess, an overrated show which is resting on the laurels of its predecessor series, The White Queen and The White Princess. And the 3rd spot on this list goes to a show I really enjoyed, but is definitely overrated, which is Medici. A show based around the House of Medici, a powerful Italian family who had considerable political and societal influence during the Italian Renaissance, which is due in large part to the extreme wealth and vast business and political connections. And I can already hear all of you shouting in outrage about Medici being included in this list. But put the pitchforks down, as you will probably need them after you see the next 2 entries in this list anyways. But Medici, if we have to clarify, is a great show. But the reason I am of the opinion that it is overrated is because the character development and completion of character arcs is pretty much non-existent, especially in the first season. The show takes far too long to find its footing and get interesting, and Dustin Hoffman is just totally miscast in his role, and his acting is a huge detriment to the show. But none of this takes away from the fact that I do think Medici is a fantastic show, one of my favorites based around the Renaissance era, but I also do feel that it is overrated and everyone is just far too quick to overlook its many flaws. And number 2 is the most controversial entry on this list, and one that I know will get people worked up and possibly get me a lot of hate in the comments, and that is Rome. Yes, I said it. Rome is overrated, and I feel like it has become a show that everyone has bandwagoned onto, and every time I mention the TV show Spartacus, there will always be someone in the comments ready to go, well, it's not as good as Rome, as if it is impossible for 2 shows based in Rome to be equally as good or entertaining. But Rome is not the epitome of historical drama perfection as many viewers would have you believe. Although it gets a lot of things right, especially in terms of historical accuracy, character development, and getting the day-to-day function of Roman society and culture correct, it also has a lot of glaring flaws. Again, in terms of historical inaccuracies as well, such as depicting Cleopatra as some whore who would go and sleep with any Roman soldier, which is not only preposterous and historically inaccurate, but also insulting to the intelligence and character of Cleopatra, who is renowned throughout the ancient world for her political maneuvering and cunningness. But aside from this, I found Rome was a show that was really slow to start and then had a really rushed ending, which are 2 things many fans of the show are likely to never admit. But I feel like Rome really needed a 3rd season to really tell the history it was trying to portray properly. But I have to say, Rome is definitely one of the best historical TV shows I have ever seen and is one of my favorites, but I'm also able to critically view the show and recognize it is overrated and overhyped as well. And the top spot on this list for most overrated historical TV show goes to Vikings. After season 4, the whole show just went downhill and it lost all its charm and was just running off the hype of its previous seasons. If you look at Vikings as a whole, it is definitely overrated, and it's hard for me to recommend to anyone to rewatch it a 2nd or 3rd time, as it has so many unanswered questions, unfinished plot threads, and just a subpar finale, and even just a whole subpar final 2 seasons. There's no way you can look back at Vikings and not at least even think, yeah, it was definitely overrated. People get sucked into the hype, and the network saw a cash cow, and Vikings became a show that overstayed its welcome. If the show had maintained the quality it had during the first 3 seasons, it would easily be the best historical show ever created. But the death of Ragnar was something the show was never able to recover from, and I feel that since Vikings is probably the most popular historical show ever, it is also worthy of having the title of being the most overrated as well. There are actually a huge number of shows out there which do a better job of storytelling and character development than Vikings, but just don't get the recognition they deserve. So there you have it. You have heard my list of the top 5 most overrated historical TV shows. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with my list or if you disagree and think I have totally lost the plot. Also, while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel as I post videos about historical movies and TV shows on a regular basis. Thank you so much for watching, and please do like and share this video with others.